Lore from nature, guys. Hello. I hope you can hear me. Um, and once again, it's just going to be like a stream where I'm chatting with you about what's going on and that kind of thing. If there is stuff going on in the chat, I'll pay attention at the end and I'll ask if there's any questions. But it's like 5 main points I want to touch on and let you guys know what's going on with the case and all that kind of stuff. And of course, we had a lot of shenanigans this week from Nature Boy, who crouches in the grass, and the only time he's in nature is when he's in it asking you guys for money and uploading it onto one of his devices. But anywho, lots of interesting things this week that led to some interesting ideas. So I'll tell you all about that. So first of all, let's just touch on and sorry about the noise. There's like, I like being outside. I work outside when it's nice. And also I'm into permaculture. So I've done like some gardening this whole week and just want to be out here. But as soon as I started, like 10 minutes before, like the neighbors decided to take their kids to the park over here, and it's a little loud. So whatever, you might hear some noises of human beings and birds and stuff, but I think you can handle it. Anyway, I want to talk about the privatization of the Sv3rige channel because I'm now pretty convinced that that's what happened, and that's really makes more sense as to why the company didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to even touch on, him having a second channel and them being the same guy because they didn't act on the first channel. And they were told about the criminality on the first channel. But he privatized it, which shouldn't have mattered. They still could have made sure it went down. Why I believe he privatized it, once again, I'll say I don't know that for certain. And I do believe all the people that have told me that they have privatized channels before, and you have to check a box that you lose your comments. But see, there's different things that happen with different actions and at different times. And so I'm not entirely sure that that would happen every time. And I even have seen it said that it doesn't. It's only when you're removing content. So I'm just not sure. But in his case, why I believe that, add to it the Patreon. So I looked at the Patreon message now that he's got the Sv3rige channel back. And I didn't see like the first message that occurred because I wasn't a subscriber. So now I've had an opportunity to go from the new one that's up or the old one that's up and click on that. And it says that it was removed. And it would say was removed for violating terms of service if Patreon had removed it. So I believe he privatized Patreon. I believe in relation to his crimes, he strategically privatized these things. And so there's that aspect. And how does it change the case? People might wonder, well, it only changes it from, that's why I never made the ban like the big issue, because I never was sure he was banned or not. I just thought he probably was. Ban evasion is only one aspect of them violating contract law and other law. And we're going to get into some of that. So one thing to tie in here is that there's been an uptick, for example, in, once again, the trolling, the including threatening type of trolling in relation to this channel coming back up. So we'll get into that here in a minute. But so the Bundeskriminalamt, how does that tie in? So the Bundeskriminalamt, I am going to make a little video next week when I actually have these things completed. But I don't want to share my screen because I noticed I only get to look at this stuff part of the time, so it's not like I just do YouTube. So I can see that you can see the header on my email there, and I didn't separate it out. So still wanted to talk to you guys. So I'll do that correctly and blot that out and show you. But I wrote to them back on June 30th. And I wrote to the TCO entity and I cited all the European laws related to terrorist content online. And I went into the different crimes related to child sex abuse material promotion, the child with them, and also the terrorism against a child, the criminality. So, and raising money and scams, all of that stuff. And I cited their laws and our laws and directed them to links to everything. And then they wrote me back the very next day. So that's the German Bundeskriminalamt. Now they are like the German FBI. So, and this is the entity that takes care of online terrorism. But they wrote me back on the very next day, which was July 1st. And their response was that they are not the right entity for that type of crime. So a human being looked at this and they told me to write to, and they gave me a link to the state that it occurred in, to the entity that handles it there. So they did that, and then I wrote back on July 2nd. So I sent also this to the Judge Diemans, the email for that court, Sv3rige 2, and her share, who was like the court clerk there, and forwarded them that entire thing as well. So nothing having been done on that, I followed up many months later. I looked up, well, how do you file a police complaint form that you want them to look into something? Because from what I understand, by way of law, even if you're in another country, whatever, they do have to respond to a complaint. So I did that and did not hear back. I filled that out on their online form. I also showed you guys many months ago, this was like autumn or in wintertime, beginning of wintertime, how to report the child. We believe her name might be Antonina, but I reported her on that website partly so that I could get a geolocator or hacker who works with finding missing children to have a file number to use to try to find her. They take cases on a pro bono basis. They decide what they're going to take. So in order to send that to them, I had to have a file number. So that's how I did that. So a lot of people will write to me, and there's two kinds that do it. Like some are well-meaning, sweet people that think, well, why don't we get a geolocator on this or a hacker? And I think some of you have written to those kinds of folks. And so those well-meaning people are awesome. And of course, by all means, if you know of someone and you want to run this by them, please do, or tell me about it. But for me, I only ran it by that one entity and never heard back. So I don't know if they would ever take the case or not. But also didn't hear back from the online Vasha or whatever I forget exactly what it's called, but it's the Baden-Württemberg Bundeskriminalamt, outlet there where you can report a child. And the mother being from that region is why I reported her there. We don't know where she was born. We don't know where she is, but that doesn't matter because she is, by way of law, the little girl in the two videos he's shown her in, and he's shown her a few other times. She is considered by way of law an endangered child and a missing child, actually, according to the laws in Germany, and her mother's German. So going with what I know, that's the angle there. I also reported her more recently to the NCMEC. And, you have to realize, well, why am I reporting her? Well, like I said, she's with 2 wanted fugitives. And let's not forget that one of them promotes incest, including, not just once or twice and not jokingly, but for years and years and years. So, and a lot of these fake accounts that are talking up that kind of activity are probably him. So he's a very sick individual. The child is endangered, and that's why. So anyway, moving on here. Let's see what we got here. Oh, someone asked me, a well-meaning person, if I could share the lead investigator in the Netherlands' email address on here. So I just wanted to let everybody know, for things like that, I have to follow the laws here and then the laws in the Netherlands. If the entity is already online and it's a public piece of information, I could share it, but I don't believe his direct email is. And so someone gave that to me, and I know myself and another party, and at least 3 people have use that information correctly. I believe the person that asked me for it would as well, but I can't share it publicly on YouTube for that reason. So yeah, not to be a roadblock toward people doing activism, well-meaning people, but I can't share that if it's not already public info. So, okay, lawyers. That was the other thing to touch on. So why I brought up a lawyer in the last Demerer hearing. So the judge had already veered toward, we were definitely already going to have a 3rd hearing, and he veered toward letting me amend the writ because he wants to know what they've earned. That will involve some interrogatories, and that could be kind of complicated if they give a lot of pushback. So I would love to have a lawyer helping me with that. Partly that was why, but also it's strategic, why I mentioned that I might want to lawyer up. Partly that's to buy time because, the judge can make a decision at any time. He can put in a ruling before our hearing. It can be in my favor or not. So I wanted to, get my due process rights on the table as something they'd be interested in, not, firstly, you have to realize that they're going to veer toward the party that's the more vulnerable party in any type of case. Like if you look at, example, a contract law situation where somebody buys a house, let's just say. So they're going to interpret the contract against the drafter of the contract more punitively. They're going to look at the person who was on the more vulnerable end more empathetically and try to, see where they, snookered here, what kind of inequity was there here, and like that. So they're a little bit veering toward me that way for that reason, but also the criminality here is so high and it is such a new type of law. So the judge is really handling it very delicately and very correctly, and I like that. But I still wanted to put that out there as, and it is something that I've been working on. So in the past, I also mentioned this in the courtroom, with my address being leaked, I had even a double desire to be careful on who I went with. I didn't want to use anybody local, and because that would leak where you're from. And it's more easy to use somebody local because you got to understand, to get pro bono legal help, it has to be the jurisdiction where you live. But the jurisdiction is in Cali, so they would have to get applied to the bar just for this case, which takes a few weeks. It's called a pro voc heis thing, where you get admitted to the bar in that state just for that case. So that can all be done, but it takes time, and I didn't even know if they were going to seal my address or what, so I waited. Didn't know if we'd get past the dimmer hearing, and we're still working on that. So I wouldn't mind lawyering up, but so I've approached a bunch of entities. I've talked to a bunch. You got to realize some of them can't take new cases right now. Some of them have conflicts of interest, and then some of them are really expensive. I have actually talked to some of those that will sometimes take pro bono and sometimes not. So it just depends. A few have actually, consulted with me on some questions I had. So that was great. One of them had a 15-minute free and then $575 an hour after that. So I'm like, okay, let me tell you this in 5 minutes and you give me a 10-minute answer. So, like that. But I reached out to 11 different entities, and I have one more I'm going to talk to next week. So, it's one thing that I touched on with someone I really think is a good idea, and I think I'm going to be doing this one way or the other. So I'll talk to you about that in a second. But I also have a new source for an amicus brief, and for those who don't know what that is something where an entity based on some aspect or another of law looks at your case and advocates for you, tells the court why they should side with you. And they argue with some legal reasoning, some case law and stuff like that. And it's their area of expertise. So with the Justice Defense Fund, their area of expertise is child sexual abuse. So she already said and passed it to their legal team that this case sounds like it would be one they could write one for. And so there's that. And then I wrote to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, but this is another one. So, and that one is about scams in general. And we're going to talk about his scams here in a sec. So I've told you about the hacker thing. Alrighty. And if I have to, by the way, represent myself in the third dimmer hearing, it's fine, or even entirely for the rest of the duration of the case, it's fine. I would just prefer to have that help, But it was a strategic time buying thing as well. All right. So this next step, this is really interesting. So the Department of Justice, has been involved in cases like this where somebody has run online scams, or they've committed child sex abuse online, and the platform has enabled it while aware and things like that. They've, penalized criminally the parent company of Pornhub. Can't think of their name off the top of my head now, but ALO Holdings Group, I believe. That's the one, and there's several others. CEOs directly named have been held liable as well. YouTube has had to pay the FTC for scams. YouTube has had to pay for doxing children by not protecting their information in a way where they were upholding their rules for confidentiality, stuff like that. So related to all of this, and I'll tell you this also, very carefully tell you though, but I know a lot of things about these people now, and some people that they've had dealings with. By these people, I mean these criminals. So these third-party content creators and who they're doing things with, anyone aiding them knowingly really might want to stop, because it could get very serious for you if you don't, legally speaking. And is it worth it? Is someone who wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire worth it? I don't think so. But so let me make it really clear, and I don't divulge things that people tell me in a way that would be in any way harmful to them. I keep things confidential, and there are people who are, I'm privy to a lot. Let's just say I know some stuff, and I know how it plays into the case. And one thing I'm thinking about doing is in relation to, all these troll accounts, some of whom threaten periodically me and stuff like that. And also we have Prussian, if you go and glance at that blog. First of all, he's visiting my page under fake accounts, but he went on some kind of a tear on the Cloak and the Dagger. He went on one against me. So he was on some kind of a ranty, beyond ranty, but, dishonest, defamatory, threatening, vile, writing. He's also breaking the law with his hashtags on his page. Kill all women is breaking the law. By the way, that was funny that Goatis was citing something happening to him where he was accused of hate speech in that video where he says he might move to Rumble, his latest scam, by the way. He said he was accused of hate speech and because he showed someone else's hate speech. That actually happened to me when I did a video where I showed Prussian Society of America's hate speech. I had to re-upload that video and blot it out, and I got a warning for that video, which it's someone else's hate speech. So, talk about projection. So anyway, but that's still up. That's a violation of their terms of service, but also protected class and law and all that. So if I made a Department of Justice report on all of this criminality and how it really is like a criminal network, how these people kind of work in collusion with one another, because he does have his little flying monkeys who are more than flying monkeys considering the level of crime here and the way they're making people feel very at risk and trying to intimidate them. I could make a case. I could make it civil, and the DOJ could make it criminal. All I have to do is file a report, and they could decide to do that. But I could also, under the civil rights, what is this thing called? Let me see. Fraud Initiative. That's it. The Civil Rights Fraud Initiative is something that would play into his scams. So let's look at the scams. And it also plays into me being treated that way on YouTube versus the way that he's treated on YouTube. So firstly, the thing that I'll touch on is the scam aspect. So, when he did all the I might move to Rumble thing and he asked for money and he said if he could get $1,000, he'd do it or whatever. And then later on, he pops the channel back up and says, oh, I didn't know I could appeal, but I appealed and it went through. And let me read you what they wrote me. And it's a basically standard form letter where this is how they write to anyone. It's we sometimes make mistakes. We try to get it right, That wasn't a personal letter. And he may have gotten it at another time because I really think he just unprivatized the channel. And they will know one way or the other. So that would be a scam. He probably never intended to move to Rumble. And it would definitely be a scam in the way back if he didn't have the channel forcibly removed and did all of that whining where he was lamenting getting his channel back and how to take action. There's no way he forgot to appeal. So we know that's, 99.999% likely a lie. He would know how to appeal something and would have if he was doing all of that moaning. The first thing you do is appeal. They tell you can appeal. So I don't believe that for a second. And I think the Patreon, he took it down as well, maybe even the PayPal also. So these are things that he did strategically, but he's just not very good at lying. So the way that he put it back out there and then told that stupid lie made it very catchable. And other people saw more that went on than I did, or I would have known sooner, but they knew, and they've relayed what he did. So I do believe that's what he did. But these other scams, all the scams, but namely when it involves you, you are then a first party. So here's what I can do. I can do this in collusion with the case that's currently going on, or I could do it if this case was ever dismissed with prejudice. I can always bring this case in. I can name them as defendants. I can name them as parties to the case, and I can subpoena them myself. I can do first of all, I would file it as a Jane Doe this time to avoid all those problems. And then I would do a ducis tecum subpoena, which means that I'm requesting the court. I'm going to be asking the court to do that, and they will make the company give their information to the other party. And if I represent myself, that party is me. Or if I have a lawyer repping me, it will be them. But then that information can be turned over to law enforcement. So basically what I'm thinking the best things to do are, is of course on June the 10th, we're going to be having our hearing and seeing if we're going forward. And I will have a few more attempts at getting representation between now and then that will fully work out, and then I can file this secondary case at any time, but I can file the DOJ report like now, and I'm going to. So next week, the DOJ report gets filed, and it's going to include all of this. And the video I made more recently about the Bundeskriminalamt, it was so I could put something into German, and then I'm going to put that into a message that I'm going to send them related to everything that I've sent them to try to get their attention yet again in German and to see if it works. And they have a YouTube channel, so I linked that. So I was just hoping, like people could do some proper activism there because that's public information. I can share that link. And if you wanted to send them something, you could. Of course, not spam them or, write bad things towards them or whatever. Anybody doing that is not part of our group to bring justice to the kids or to Diane. So if I brought that type of a civil rights case, I would do it with nominal damages, like $1 in damages, to make the point to the court that this is really for, the purpose of finding criminals and stopping them from the inequities, and also making people feel unsafe. Those would be the two grounds I would have standing on. So yeah. And then they would have to issue it. If I got a Ducis Tecum subpoena ordered, they would fight it probably, and they would either win or not. If not, then they would be compelled by the court to release the info. That's already part of the case I have going on right now. So of course we'll see what goes on with that. And so I think that's how I'm going to handle it, is do this case first, do that secondarily if things don't work out. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, on the fraud, this is really interesting because I looked at this the other day. So that can involve violation of criminal laws if the entity receives federal funds. So I was like, well, does YouTube, Google, or Alphabet, the parent company of Google, do they receive federal funds? And they do indirectly. So what's interesting about that is, so like you have federal agencies that pay for ads related to like military recruitment or public health or things like that. And then you have public sector initiatives where YouTube is used by government entities for educational programs, or for like public service announcements. So all I would need to do is fill out an FOIA request to clear that up. And once that would be cleared up, if they do receive federal funds, then they would be subject to the Civil Rights Fraud Initiative. So that is interesting. And the criminal act would be failing to enforce their terms of service. Believe it or not, that's actually a criminal act of a company. But it's also causing discriminating and causing disproportionate harm. I've seen Diane have her videos removed, and look at the criminality here that they're more than aware of. And by the way, she was showing that it looked like they were shielding him because she reported certain videos, because you do realize, like, this is the re-enabling of an account. If they did do this, that doxed her, deployed people to go and make phone calls, removing benefits and housing for her and her child, who he wasn't taking care of, by the way, and to lie on her in a criminal manner, to defame her, harassed her criminally for years, and eventually raised money to what he's wanted for and evading arrest for. He's accused of having someone beat her almost to death, throw acid on her, and twice tried to burn her child alive, and did burn down their house. So, this channel being back up, so her reporting that it's not, this is not a matter of people just not liking content or something. So, but she was showing how it was saying it couldn't find the video or whatever. So when I went to his channel, I used the latest video, and I said, misinformation was what I cited. And I said, this is not, this person said that their channel had been banned, and you can see him say it in this video. But it looks like it was privatized possibly, and that would be a scam because he raised money. And so I haven't heard back on that. It's been done a little while ago, so that's kind of interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on with that. Nothing much goes on with the buttons, but the length of time it's taking them to look at it makes me think they're hyper aware of the situation. And we know that they are. So, and now they know that we know. It was actually kind of dumb of him to put the channel back up in a way right now. So he thought it would be like this big deterrent of, ha, 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 you're not going to get me my old channels back. Why don't you just give up? And that's what the trolls are saying, along with threatening me. And along with, like, one of them, and I think this was Prussian based on, it was like, I guess the same day he must have gone on that rant about me. It was post after post, like it was keeping on dinging, and I looked, and it was every video, like, and it was different stuff, insulting type of stuff. And finally just had to ban him. But, imagine spending your time creating this many sock puppet accounts as they do, and all of this and that. And there's also been some talk of, with the geolocators, whether or not his latest video is really where he says he is. So I don't know the answer to that. Like if he's using a green screen or something. It does look super still in the background of it, but I don't know, because I'm just no expert in that kind of thing. But it's entirely possible. And you got to realize, he could make a video, and then he could wait a while, and then he could upload it when he's ready to move again. So to me, I'd never pay much attention to what's going on in his videos, to tell you the truth, in that way. But of course it makes sense too, because it could be helpful. So we kind of know what part of the world, from Marina's stamp video, if that's even real stamps, where they've kind of been. We also know why those stamps don't matter with regard to where she would or wouldn't have been. because of the way that they stamp and when they stamp and whatnot. People that travel in Europe regularly said why that didn't matter. So yeah, that's about all I had to talk to you guys about. So yeah, if there would be any questions, I'll kind of just sit here for a second. I don't see chat activity, so maybe people are just like not into this and will watch it later. If so, if you want to like leave a question in the comment section, please do. You know, I still don't have like I just do this on my laptop and it's super draining of my computer, so I don't like show videos or anything because every time I try to, it buffers like crazy and stuff. So my streams are just like me relaying info, super straightforward. So yeah. So yeah, I think I'll just wrap it up if I don't see anything here in the next, few seconds or so, and tell you guys thank you for all your support and all your wonderful comments and all of your activism. Many of you are doing things that you're not, seeking even any, straightforward like hey thanks kind of recognition for. You're just doing it and no one even knows who you are. I've received important information from such people, and I really appreciate that very much. And social media can be used for wonderful things. It can be used for terrible things. I think good always finds a way. And I can't think of anybody like this guy. By the way, that was another thing I wanted to touch on. This weird magical thinking these weirdos have, because I didn't open Prussian's blog rant about me. I just saw the first part, which was that I have eyes of a demon and I'm a demonic witch. Part of why he's saying that is I insulted his boyfriend and I said that his eyes are soulless and evil looking, and they are. And he also cited that they're all into witchcraft, which I called out. So he keeps on calling me a witch when I have like no affiliation with anything like that whatsoever. And never have. So, and that's what they're all into. So it's classic projecting and very weird since, Goatis makes it really clear. He even has some video up where the title is something like how to know if you're under a spell. First of all, I don't believe in such stupid things personally. Now, there are people who do believe in like entities that are good and evil. And I don't think everybody that believes in that is stupid like he is. But this belief that he has any magical powers that some of his Lord Goatis lemmings have is ridiculous. This man has no special power and nobody like him ever ends up very well. Charles Manson's followers who were, dripping with LSD, they believed that. They believed that that guy could hear their thoughts. And they believed that for years until, one day they woke up, maybe their brain dried out from all the drugs and they were in their cell one day realizing that this guy ruined their life and that he had no special powers whatsoever. So that's what Goatis is. He's just a little man with no special powers. Now, it's not even somebody's fault like him that they are what they are. Not that that matters. You don't let them hurt people just because that's the case. But that being said, there's no woo-woo happening here with this guy. And I don't know of one person like this guy that's ended up well in the end, even if it takes a little while. From your Ted Bundys to your Richard Ramirez's to your Charles Mansons to your Goatis, name one that had a wonderful ending where they were a millionaire living it up, lived a wonderful life, had a wonderful family and a bunch of people loving them and everything went swell. No. Just even his outlook on life won't allow that to happen. People don't act this way if they're happy and normal. They don't have these kinds of relationships with their loved ones. So yeah, he can't help being what he is or he would stop. It's too bad we can't just fix his brain. But, if we could, we would. But really, we just have to protect other people from people like this. For me, it's not like a punishing thing. Oh, and also to address the trolls who say things to me. And I've had a few well-meaning people say it differently, but like the trolls that say, why do you care about this one guy so much and you spend so much time on this, Hang on. First of all, if I could spend more time on it, I would, because I could do a better job. That's why I wish I had like powerful legal entities. You got to realize YouTube and Google are spending they have millions. I don't know. They haven't spent millions yet, but they've spent a lot. They spent thousands at this point, and they could spend, more. And Priscilla has help, they pay her, but she also has paralegals doing work like what I do. They're doing the research. They're presenting her with briefing her on all the information, looking up case law, looking up statutory law, blah, blah, blah. So, and they're all the filing fees, all the different stuff. So, they're spending money and they have a lot of help. I'm just me. And I have to do regular work, and then I also allow myself my own life because I have, I'm like I said, I'm doing permy stuff. I'm a member of a couple of permaculture groups here, and we put in some gardens. I do other types of work too. So, and just things that I want to do, because I, can't look at this all the time. It would drive me nuts. But in the past, I've done, I did a fundraiser for the West Memphis 3 long time ago. If anybody isn't familiar with that case, it's a case of 3 boys that were wrongfully convicted of killing 3 more boys. It turns out, most likely from the DNA evidence, it was one of the step parents and a friend of his who did it, which was found many, many, many years later. But I did a benefit for them, and I did a whole presentation for them, and I wrote a thing for a local paper that was affiliated with my college for them. And other people like me, got interested in that case as well from seeing that same documentary. It was called Paradise Lost, and they did a 1, 2, and 3 movies. Brent Turvey, and I forget the other filmmaker's name, but check it out if you haven't. So, it was a very interesting case. It was very terrible what happened with them, but they did get out. They've been out for a while now, and now they're trying to clear their names because they got out on an Alford plea. So, which means you're out, but you have a conviction over your head. And they want them to actually go after the guy whose hair was found in the ligature and whose DNA was found on something else. Those are the real guys who did this, I believe, and they believe. And then, there's things you can't do if you have a conviction on your head. One of them wants to be an attorney. And one of them won't hardly leave his house because he's afraid of the police. Because if you get arrested again, if you've been out on an Alford plea, you can go back to jail for your old sentence. So an Alford plea is, not a great thing. It's just them getting to let you out while not having to fess up. And imagine that there even is such a thing as that, instead of just admitting wrongdoing and having to admit it, that they were wrong, and they were deliberately wrong in many ways. If you look at those films, you'll understand. So I did that because I wanted to, and I've had people come after me as well, well, why, if you were really scared, Prussian was doing this. If they were really scared and he did this about Jake, they wouldn't do any of this or talk about who they are and all this. I had a guy who was a reverend, who was a pedophile, who was convicted of raping a 14-year-old boy. After he got out, he got online bothering multiple people. I was one of them. He posted a plot map of the county I live in with my house on it, talking about where I live and stuff. And he tried to do it in this kind of way where it didn't look threatening. It just looked like random or whatever, but it was clear he was, being very caustic toward me too. So I got on there and I said, hey, just doing this in the way that we're connected, like I'm connected to that, would look like it was meant to be menacing. If anybody uses it in any way, it looks like exactly what it is. You may think you cleverly worded it, but you didn't, and you probably ought to take that down. And he did. So, I do this type of work, and you take on a case and it takes some time. I happened to stumble into this. It's as interesting to me and as important to me as the way I felt about that film that I happened to see, where I wanted to do the little fundraiser and the paper and the whatever. Now I have a paralegal background, and that's what I do for a living. So I can do more work on something like this if I want to take it on. So this is no different than somebody that writes a book, or somebody that, why do people paint paintings for hours? Because, I don't need that painting, but maybe they want to. Maybe it means something to them, So I see some activity here. Thank you for all this. Well, thank you, Deborah Emerson. And so yeah, most people saying things like that, or most people say what Deborah just said, that are sincere. A few people might ask that question sincerely, but generally the trolls have nothing new in their playbook, other than they like to, give some jabs that sound kind of threatening once in a while. But it is what it is. I've already done it, so I'm certainly not stopping until we go all the way with this and see where we can get. So everybody take care. I'll next week try to upload some content on what I'm doing, and then and what's gone on with everything. And then we have some time between now and court. So I get nervous before court because that just always is very rattling. So I will probably take a sabbatical on Goat Boy for a while after. I like to upload something at least once a week, but then I'll not even, I like to pretend he doesn't exist either after they've like irritated the hell out of me or after I've had to prepare one of these documents and look at this for so much. I'll probably take a good week long break and then I'll get back into it to get ready for court. But I will update you in between now and then. So thank you guys, and everybody take care. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.